If you're looking at a house and you want to know everything there is to know about what it's like to have a septic system, then stick around. Today I'm going to go through what it's like to have a septic system, things you should look out for, and just kind of misconceptions that may put your mind at ease. So stick around and we'll learn. If you're new to the channel, welcome. My name is John Cummings. I'm with Better Homes and Gardens, Cassidon Realty. My hope for this channel is that I could help to inform you of anything you need to know for your real estate needs, whether that's looking at specific neighborhoods, a specific topic in mind to help you with your home purchase. And today specifically, we're talking about septic systems. Now, one of the things when people talk about septic systems, they kind of cringe. I know that I did personally, me and my wife, when we were looking for houses. We did not want to get a house with septic, but in our area where we live, Lower Saucon Township, or Hellertown area, it's very common to have a septic system. And I just kind of wanted to share some of the things that I've learned as a homeowner with a septic system, one that has failed and I've had to replace. If you stick around to the end of the video, I'll show some pictures of what it looks like when you get your septic system replaced. What you can kind of expect for the aftermath, because there are things that come along with after the fact of getting a septic system replaced. But first thing I wanted to go around and show you guys is the tank itself. So when we're looking at the septic systems, it depends on the size of the tank that you actually have, based on how big your system's going to be. I have a Greenworks system. It's a plastic tank. And most tanks, you'll see the actual lids to the tanks. Now, in this video, I'm not going to go over the ins and outs of how a septic system actually works. I'm just kind of going to let you know what it's like to own one. What is it actually? What do you have to do? Do you have to do anything? Is it any different from, having a public system, right? And realistically, like I said, here are the three lids. This is right in my backyard here. Having a septic system is pretty similar to having a public system. I grew up with a public system. I have a septic now. We've been living with this for 7 years now. And we really haven't had any issues. Now, you don't get a septic bill, but you do have to do cleanings, pumpings, and inspections, right? So instead of getting a monthly bill, one of the things that's different is, you'll get a big bill, maybe $500 every couple of years, maybe, when you're doing to pump these out. They say every 7 years. I do it every 3 just to be safe. But you pump it out, you get it inspected. They look for anything that could be going awry. But this system, like I said, we replaced this. It's 2 years old, so I haven't had any issues with it. And yeah, you don't have to worry about it, to be completely honest. When the system is new, that's why it's really important when you do, when you're looking at home with a septic, you always want to get it inspected, always. When we bought this house, this septic system, we knew it was bad. We actually knew it was bad. We got it inspected, and it failed. So what does that mean? If your septic system actually fails? There's a number of reasons why it could fail. It could be a blocked pipe. It could be a crushed pipe. It could be the tank is leaking. It could be a number of different things. But basically what they're going to do is they're going to pump some water through your system into the tank and make sure it's draining out properly. Now, for our system, it was a complete failure. It failed the drain field failed, everything, right? And actually, it's funny because our old tank is right next to this tree, this huge tree. And if you know anything about septics, we had a cement tank. You don't put it right next to a tree because the roots can penetrate into the cement, and there goes your system, right? And it had a very small drain field right along this tree line here. But this was built in 1958, so pretty common for this area. 100, it's not a big tank, small drain field, very different from what they do now, but it did fail actually. So, we had the luxury of back then we bought in 2017, 2018, and we had the luxury of thinking about this purchase, right? So we actually visited this house multiple times. We looked at different things. We really loved the area, but we knew the septic failed. So we were like terrified of this, right? We didn't know, what to expect really. And So, we actually went on our honeymoon, we mulled it over, we were able to wait maybe 6 months before we actually pulled the trigger on buying this house. And it was the best decision I think we ever made, to be completely honest with you, because we love the house, we love the area. So if you're thinking about a home with a septic, even if it fails, just know, actually in this type of market where it's just a crazy seller's market, if you come upon a home that has a septic that fails, that actually may be a leg up, because it's going to knock a lot of buyers out of the pool, and you might be able to take that on. And remember, if septic fails, it's always negotiable. You could go back to the seller and say, hey, I can tell you they're probably not going to fix it, but they will probably take money off of the purchase, which is exactly what they did for this home. They took money off of the price, which we then put towards replacing the system. Now, just because your system fails doesn't mean it needs to replace immediately. We actually lived in this home for a year with the system that we had when it was just me and my wife, right? So when we got it inspected, they said, yeah, it's failing, but it's not going to be a catastrophic failure. We're going to have sewage all over the place in your entire yard. It was just, you need to get this replaced, especially if you're going to have kids and you're going to grow the size of your family. It needs to be replaced. So we actually waited a year, saved up some money, and then replaced it. And we didn't have any issues in that year, none whatsoever. So just know that it's just because something fails, it doesn't necessarily mean it needs to get done that very instant. Now, one thing that you should look out for when you're looking into homes is, if you know where the drain field is, which our drain field, and I'm proud to say, is you can't really see it here, and I'll tell you why I'm proud to say that, but our drain field is, it takes up basically this entire half of the yard. It's very big. So just know, if you get it replaced, your drain field could take up a huge chunk of your yard. But if you know where the drain field is, you could look to see, if the ground is very squishy, you're sinking in kind of. We've actually walked on properties that we were thinking about buying before this house, and you knew the system failed because you were just walking in the yard on a dry day, and the grass is just completely like you're sinking into the ground basically. So that should get some question marks. Also, if you see parts of the drain field, like this is the one side of our drain field, if it's like blown out and you see that there was dirt replaced recently, it's probably an indication that they've had an issue in the past. So it's something to look out for sure. But again, we had this replaced. We had no issues at the time. So it's not the end of the world. It's just more work. It's just, it's money, but it's a negotiable item that you can, bring up to the seller and maybe get knocked off the price or whatever it may be. But realistically, it's no different than if you have a public system. Actually, to me, it's kind of better in some ways if you have a new system. I mean, let's just say the worst happens and you have sewage back up into your house, which has happened to some of my family members with public as well. At least I know that it's just our sewage, right? I mean, that's really what it comes down to, is it's not the entire townships. It's just us. So, half glass full kind of realistically. But, that's just one of the ways I think about it. Now, what are some of the things that I did not think about when we got a septic? Okay, so one of the things that I didn't realize is, we have this big yard, right? We wanted a big yard, and for our kids, and we see our trampoline. It's a great yard for us. But what I didn't realize is how big this drain field actually has to be. I mean, it literally goes fence to fence at a diagonal. I mean, it takes up the whole thing. It's massive. Now, when we had to get this replaced, you always have different options with sand mounds and this and that. And I did not want a sand mound. I was absolutely 100% against it. And with this Greenwork system, they had different levels, right? So you could, have it where it was like 3 feet of a difference in height variation from your yard. So basically, if this is your yard, it's going to be up 3 feet. And then there was a 1 foot grade change. So we went with a 1 foot grade change. It was a little bit more money, but I didn't want the big change in the slope. So what ended up happening is, we got this big mound, put in. It was like a 1 foot change. But what I did not realize, and I wish I knew ahead of time, was that 1 foot is very steep. It's like you got flat, and then it goes up. And then it comes over, and then it drops right down. And it's just a big drop off, massive drop off. I actually remember for the first year that I was cutting the grass around here, I literally was at an angle cutting around this thing. It was a real big pain in the butt. And, I actually used to just tell people I was off-roading when I'd go to cut the grass, because it was ridiculous to do. So what I ended up doing was I regraded my entire yard, basically the entire 3/4 of my yard, because I was just sick and tired of doing that, and I didn't want my kids like kind of tripping and falling, because it was a really steep, just big bump. It was almost like a step, and I hated it. So what I did was regrade the whole yard. Now, just a tip for you, if you do end up doing this, if you want to do this, how you get a bunch of free dirt is you call your local pool companies. That is exactly what I did. I called my local pool companies, and they will deliver you as much free dirt as you want, right? And in order for you to regrade your whole lawn area, you need a lot of dirt. I think I had 13 triaxles in this yard, and if I still have the pictures, I'll put them at the end of the video so you can see. My son was I think he was 1 year old when we did that, and he loved watching the trucks, but it was a lot of work. I did this all myself. So we got the dirt piled in. I got a skid steer, and I did the best I could to make this all kind of evened out and just slope it down nice. Planted all the grass. One thing that to note is when you get dirt from other places, there's so many different, it's different soil. So our soil, when it came here, had tons of rocks, so many rocks, like boulders. So I had to literally like dig them out, and I had to get all the rocks out and put chains on the back of a quad and drive it around, and get all the rocks to pop out. If you ever have questions about how to do any of this, feel free to reach out, because like I got all the tips for you here. But then I finally got it all cleaned up, planted the grass, and then I thought the grass would just be perfectly fine. But since it was different soil, it just didn't grow right away. So it took me probably 2 years of reseeding and aerating and just getting it all good to go. And now this year, it finally looks. I'm happy with it, at least. It's not perfect, but I'm much happier. There's big open spots of dirt that I was just, in the summertime, it was driving me nuts. But that's one of the things I did not expect when replacing the septic system. But other than that, it's we really have no issues. Every now and again, we get an alarm. We have a couple alarms in our house that tell us when things are what are happening. So if you do have a septic system, you kind of want to figure out how it works. I would call a company, have them come and just tell you how your system works, because you want to know what's going on. So we actually have an alarm on ours, and this is for a spindle that's inside our tanks that keeps it circulating, so there's airflow. And if I hear this alarm go off in the middle of the night, the first time I was like, what the heck is that? It was blocked. It was gummed up with I honestly forget what it was, but I have a wife, so I'm just letting you guys know, if you have multiple girls in your house, do not flush the tampons down there. It will get caught in those spindle fibers, and you will have to pull the tank lid off and get them out, right? So that's something that does happen. It hasn't happened to us probably in 2 years, knock on wood, but it does happen. So you just got to be aware of that and aware of what your system alarms are. We do also have another alarm inside our house, very loud alarm. And I hope I never hear this alarm, because what it means basically is we have a pump. We have another cement tank all the way down here, and I actually covered this tank completely. That was another reason why I wanted to regrade the yard, is we had a cement tank that was protruding right out here, probably 3 feet high, and I didn't want my kids jumping off of it and falling on it and whatever. So I completely buried it. But if I ever need to get to that tank, I have to dig up to the lid. They have razors that you could raise it and kind of make it level, flush with the yard, but I didn't. I just remember where it is, and if I ever need to get to it, I'll dig it up. Now, the reason I would have to dig that up is because the pump doesn't work. And if that pump doesn't work, it no longer pumps the water out to the drain field, which will trigger that alarm in my house, basically telling me, hey, this isn't going to work. It's going to get too full. Your tank's going to get full, and it's going to back up into your house. So if I ever hear that alarm, it goes off in my head. Just turn all the water off. Don't do anything until I get this fixed. So these are the reasons you kind of want to know what your system is, how it works. Get a professional out there and just let them investigate it so that you know what to do if you have an issue. But other than that, it's really just keep making sure you pump the tanks, making sure you do your preventative maintenance, and just making sure you're good with your system, right? Don't put grease down the drains. Don't put tampons down the drain. Don't use Scott toilet paper, right? Don't use Quilted Northern. I mean, that's really the advice I can give you. And as long as you treat it good, you're not going to have any issues, and it's just as reliable, maybe even better than a public system. But again, the biggest pet peeves I have really that these lids stick out of the ground. They have things that you can cover them, like decorative rocks and stuff that go over. I hated them. These were actually sticking out even further from the ground. I almost buried this completely. I was going to bury the rest of these, but it was just too high, but it drives me nuts that they're sticking out of the ground. Like I said, there are things you could put here, but a lot of houses around here with older systems, like my neighbors, their tank lids are actually buried underground. So they have to dig them up every time they get pumps. I don't. So it's kind of a benefit, at least, if I have to, if the spindle alarm goes off, I can just pull the lid off and clean the spindle, or when they come to pump the tank, they could just pump it. It's right here. I don't have to dig it up. But the downfall is the lids are popped out of the ground, and it just drives me nuts, right? To cut the grass, or if the kids are jumping on it or whatever, it's just one of my pet peeves about it. But really, those are the main things about it. If you have other questions about a septic, if you're thinking about buying a home with a septic, feel free to reach out. Again, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. If you're thinking about moving to Lehigh Valley in the next 9 or 90 days, feel free to reach out. Call, email, text. All my information is in the description below. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out. Follow the channel, like the channel, spread the word. Yeah, that's it. I hope to see you guys around the neighborhood.